When discussing British punk, two names often spark heated debates among fans: the Exploited and the Varukers. Both bands emerged from the chaotic early 1980s UK punk scene, a time marked by unemployment, political unrest, and a disillusioned youth. While they share similar roots in the hardcore and street punk movements, their paths, impact, and legacies reveal both common ground and striking contrasts. The Exploited, formed in Edinburgh in 1979 by Wattie Buchan, quickly became notorious for their aggressive sound and provocative lyrics. Their early records like Punk's Not Dead and Troops of Tomorrow defined the UK '82 sound: fast, raw, and unapologetically confrontational. The Exploited leaned heavily into shock value, with their spiked hair, militaristic imagery, and slogans like Punk's Not Dead, turning them into a symbol of defiance. The Exploited arguably reached a wider audience. Their anthems like Army Life and Dead Cities became staples in punk culture, and their visibility on television and in the press made them both famous and infamous. Wattie's outspoken nature and controversies, ranging from fights with other bands to accusations of exploiting punk for commercial gain, fueled their notoriety but also cemented their role as one of punk's most recognizable acts. The Varukers, on the other hand, started in Leamington Spa in 1979 under the leadership of Rat Anthony Martin. While equally fast and aggressive, the Varukers often carried a more politically conscious tone. Their style drew heavily from Discharge's D-beat sound, fusing relentless drumming with harsh guitar riffs. Albums such as Bloodsuckers showcased their anti-war, anti-establishment messages, giving them a sharper activist edge, compared to the Exploited's more anarchic and nihilistic attitude. The Varukers, though never achieving the same mainstream visibility, earned immense respect in the underground. Their commitment to the hardcore punk ethos and refusal to dilute their message kept them credible among purists. In many ways, the Varukers became a band for the diehards, those who wanted punk to remain fiercely political and uncompromising. Popularity. The Exploited arguably achieved a higher level of mainstream visibility within the punk and alternative music world. Formed in Edinburgh in 1979 by Wattie Buchan, the band quickly became infamous for their confrontational image, spiked hair, and slogans like Punk's Not Dead. Their debut album of the same name remains one of the most iconic UK '82 records. Songs such as Army Life, Dead Cities, and Sex and Violence were anthems that spread far beyond the underground, often cited in documentaries and punk retrospectives. The Exploited's image of chaos and rebellion made them synonymous with the street punk aesthetic, and their longevity, continuing to tour internationally into the 2000s and beyond, cemented their fame. They became a cultural symbol, not just a band for what the general public imagined punk to be. The Varukers, on the other hand, while influential and respected, retained a more underground profile. Formed in 1979 by vocalist Anthony "Rat" Martin, the band leaned heavily into hardcore punk and D-beat styles, often drawing comparisons with Discharge. Their music was aggressive, politically charged, and uncompromising, tackling themes of war, social injustice, and state oppression. While albums like Bloodsuckers and Prepare for the Attack resonated deeply with punk purists, they never reached the same iconic status outside of hardcore circles. The Varukers built a loyal following, especially among fans of crust, hardcore, and anarcho-punk, but their fame remained more niche compared to the Exploited. In terms of global recognition, the Exploited undeniably reached a wider audience. Their striking imagery and catchphrases placed them in mainstream media, whereas the Varukers remained beloved within the hardcore underground. Yet, within dedicated punk communities, the Varukers' authenticity and raw sound often earned them as much respect, if not more, for staying closer to punk's anti-commercial roots. Brutal. The Exploited, led by the infamous Wattie Buchan, became one of the most notorious punk acts. Their music was marked by fast, relentless guitar riffs, shouted vocals and lyrics dripping with anger against authority, war, and society. Songs like Dead Cities and Punk's Not Dead defined their uncompromising sound. Yet, beyond their music, their brutal reputation was fueled by Wattie's confrontational personality and the band's chaotic live performances, Fights often broke out during gigs, and the Exploited were sometimes accused of being provocateurs rather than unifiers in the punk movement. Their blunt slogans and militaristic energy made them both admired and feared, earning a reputation as one of the most aggressive forces in punk. On the other hand, the Varukers leaned more heavily into a hardcore and D-beat influence style. While less theatrical than the Exploited, they carried an equally punishing sonic assault. With pounding drums and distorted riffs, their songs like Protest and Survive delivered uncompromising messages of anti-war and anti-establishment resistance. The brutality of the Varukers was more about sheer sound and the bleak political imagery in their lyrics. Unlike the Exploited, their controversies were less tied to personalities and more connected to the confrontational content of their music and association with anarcho-punk circles. In terms of cases of controversy, the Exploited were far more frequently in the headlines due to Wattie's outspoken views and the violent atmosphere surrounding their shows. They were accused at times of flirting with extremism and even criticized by fellow punks for being too sensationalist. The Varukers, by comparison, were seen as more ideologically consistent, focusing on themes of anti-capitalism and anti-war without drawing as much scandal around their image. Who is better? So who is better? The answer depends on what one values in punk music. If punk is about pure energy, anarchy, and unforgettable slogans, the Exploited win without question. They became iconic, and their influence stretched worldwide, especially in street punk scenes. But if punk is about evolution, heavier soundscapes, and consistent political commitment, the Varukers stand taller. They helped lay the groundwork for crust and hardcore movements that would influence countless underground bands. Ultimately, both bands represent different shades of the same anger. The Exploited scream chaos in its rawest form, while the Varukers channel rage into sharpened political critique. In truth, punk wouldn't be the same without either of them, and perhaps the real answer is that they're both essential in their own way.